For quite some time now, conservatives here in the United States have claimed that some of the biggest social media companies, search engines, have actually been censoring them. Twitter has allegedly been engaging in shadow bans of conservatives. Facebook is blocking conservative voices. All of that, technically, according to the terms of service for those websites, they are allowed to do. But what these companies are not allowed to do is use somebody's political preference as a means to hire or fire them. And according to a new lawsuit, Google may actually be involved in doing just that. Joining me now to talk about this is Scott Hardy with Top Class Actions. Scott, there is a world of difference than a website not allowing somebody on it versus a media company like Google saying, oh, we're not going to hire you because you're conservative. One of those is just a company's preference. The other, blatantly against the law. So tell us what's going on with this lawsuit here.
Right. So a lot of this really got going a couple of years ago, where you had typically white male conservatives that are working for Google, and they were just kind of having meetings because, Google is based in California. It's a very liberal state and has a very liberal slant to their corporation. I mean, their corporation was started saying, do good. Now, that shouldn't be a liberal talking point, but hey, you've got Google that is pushing for, conservation rights and women's rights and LGBT rights. And then you have these groups of typically white male men that were, or white male men, they weren't male men, but you get what I'm saying. White males that were starting little groups and conversations within Google itself, kind of saying that they were feeling like they were being outcast. And so you had these groups that started, and then you have it kind of bubbling up more, where you have people saying that they were applying to Google, that they might have been well known or actually published papers supporting a conservative slant, and they weren't hired. They were pushed out of the hiring process as the hiring managers were doing their due diligence. And as you said, if you're not being hired because you're Republican, then that is just outright illegal. You can't do that. If you're not being hired because you're not qualified, then hey, sure. But you can't have the slant. And a big reason that the judge actually was very dubious about letting this case go forward is because now we're in the discovery phase. And so the plaintiff attorneys can start subpoenaing records from HR, from hiring managers, from executives. And that could be a PR nightmare for Google. But we'll see. The judge has said, the judge is really close to just throwing it out because they don't, hiring somebody, there's a lot of nuance to it. You got to hire somebody that you like, that you want to work with. And the judges said, maybe Google was doing something illegal, but, make sure that you're not abusing the discovery process, that you're not trying to subpoena records that have nothing to do with this case. Because if you are starting to abuse it, I'm probably going to throw this case out. So it'll be an interesting one to watch.
Well, and what's really interesting to me, too, is that one of the original plaintiffs on this lawsuit, a man by the name of James Damore, however you say that, but he penned a memo that I'm sure most people are familiar with, saying that women are biologically inferior to men when it comes to taking jobs in the tech industry. So suddenly, this whole thing kind of takes on a whole new meaning because, like you said, you've got a bunch of white men, conservative white men, who claims that they were either denied employment or, terminated, I guess, because they were white male conservatives. Yet at the same time, we've seen from at least, the original plaintiff that this guy obviously thinks men are superior to women. And let me tell you, if you're going around your workplace saying things like that and you get fired for it, suddenly you're not being fired just because you're conservative or just because you're a white man. It's because, one, you're absolutely being discriminatory in your own point of view, But second, you're creating a toxic work environment for everyone there. And yes, that is justifiable. So I'm going to be honest here. I don't side with the plaintiffs on this. I do not necessarily believe that that is what has happened here. This may be the first time I've ever had to say this to you, but I will also add, if this is something Google is doing, then it is entirely illegal and they need to face the music for it. In no way would I ever condone not hiring somebody or firing somebody just because of their political affiliation. Even here at Ring of Fire, which obviously we have a leftward slant, we have had numerous Republicans that have worked for us for several years with this particular program. So even we, a left-leaning media outlet, has no problem hiring conservatives. We get along great. They've been good friends over the years. So Google can suck it up too, but I don't think that that's what's happening in this particular instance. Perhaps I'm wrong. We'll have to wait and see.
Right. I think that, if there was a problem, I think it was probably addressed when you had this big issue a few years ago. From what I'm seeing, the difficulty you have is that if you're a challenge to work with, then you're not going to last. It's all good to be Republican, be Democrat, be libertarian, go to the Green Party. That's fine, but your work quality is your work quality. And if you kick butt and you keep your head down and work, you're going to do great. But if you're sitting there and you're causing other coworkers to have a problem and you're writing papers that sit there and absolutely discriminate against the other sex, then you're going to get fired. I mean, come on, you have to have a common sense approach at some point where you want to work with people that don't have to have the same political beliefs, like you just said, but they work hard and you enjoy spending time with them because you're going to spend more time with them than anybody else other than your family.
Absolutely. For more information about this particular topic, you can follow the link in the description of this video. Head on over to Top Class Actions and make sure you sign up for their weekly newsletter. Get all of these stories plus many more delivered directly to your inbox each week. Scott Hardy, Top Class Actions, thank you very much for talking with us today.
You're welcome. Thanks for your time, Farron.